Thank you, Lord, for this opportunity. Please give me the right questions to ask and let this be for your will to be done in your glory. In your name, Lord Jesus, help me to do the best I can here. Amen and amen. Howdy, welcome to Do Not Talk, talking about two things you're never supposed to talk about, politics and religion. I'm CharLee Simons. Yeah, my voice kind of a little jacked up. Pick me something up, and as usual, it goes right into my lungs, and I'm like, what the heck? And I'm talking with this guy last night named Paul Preston, talking about what's happening this coming Tuesday, June 17th. And I said, man, we got to get this word out. We got to get the information there. We got to get as many people there as possible. It is imperative. This is a huge thing. So, yes, Paul is on the show. Going to talk to him in just a second. And it's all about New California State. When you get to a point in your own state where things are so bad and so dominated and controlled by one party, this is not really necessarily a party thing. This is a responsible government thing. I'll tell you that right up front. At least I don't consider it to be a party thing, because there's people who are absolutely wanting to have a new California state who really have no party preference or might even be on the left. I don't know. I'm just glad that all of them realize there's not a light at the end of the tunnel. This was our governor, Governor Hairdo, I affectionately call him, who just disastrously ruined the response to the riots in Los Angeles. Well, started by doing nothing. Then President Trump stepped in and said, you're not going to do something. I'm going to protect the people of your own state. And he did. And the riots have been all but quelled, even with all the court battles going on back and forth and so on and so forth. But a president cannot save a very poorly run state because of our U.S. Constitution. There are limitations to what the federal government can do because there are such things as state rights. Adam Carolla, do you know him? He's a comedian. He's a pundit. He's definitely no longer woke. He's full on awake and has been for a while. Governor Hairdo made the mistake of going on Adam Carolla's show. Did you see this?
Half of African Americans in the state of California, roughly half of Latino families, have no access to a checking account or an ATM. Things we take for granted. They don't have a checking account.
What's wrong with them?
And well, because they don't have the resources to sock those things away.
Why do we have them?
A lot of different reasons, but roughly half those families don't.
Why those two groups don't have access?
A lot of just happens to be that we can
so
talk
they're
about.
Flawed?
No, they're hardly flawed, but they're struggling.
Genetically
Folks are making
flawed.
their word. Hardly.
But okay, but
absolutely
do Asians have this problem?
I mean, a lot of communities have problems. A lot of whites have these problems.
Oh,
but
so that's not just black and Hispanic.
No, but
why did you bring up black and Hispanic?
Because the magnitude is ominous.
There's
the
so
problem,
many more.
The magnitude in percentage.
But there's no way to figure out how that happened.
A lot of folks are struggling because they can't find
why
jobs.
Blacks and
because
Hispanics?
They're working. Everybody's struggling.
So Asians are suffering just as much as blacks.
You see, it's just nothing. When he gets the slightest bit of pushback, you can see him just fall.
That's who allegedly the majority of people in California elected to be their governor. Not just once, but twice. I want him gone. If I can't get him gone, because I'm all on board with the whole recall thing. Absolutely. I don't care if there's only a year and a half left in his term. Look at the damage he does in a week. Get him out. SavingCalifornia.vote. Go there. Look them up. See what they're doing. Get involved with that. SavingCalifornia.vote. But there's also another thing happening that I love this. I admire and respect the man who is really spearheaded it. He is Paul Preston. Welcome to Do Not Talk. How are you, my friend?
Great. How are you doing, CharLee? Other than a little bit of a cough thing, and we in radio suffer from these things. People don't know how much we suffer, so we can get the news out to them, but get our throats in order, and then our lungs and everything else.
Yeah,
It's
that's
quite a
and now
problem.
I have to factor in television. I've been a radio guy all my career, and now I'm on TV a lot and on screen and on
Right.
camera, and I'm like, "Oh, boy." I have to
And
think
you and
about
I
how
have
I
faces
look.
for radio.
I do have a face for radio. I am so thankful and grateful for what you are doing and all the huge staff of volunteers. Nobody's getting paid to do this. They're
Mm.
doing it for the love of the state of California. We love where we live. Our families are here. Our friends are here. Our history is here. And we're being pushed out. We're being ignored. We're being taken over. We've been taken over by, it's my understanding that it's something like almost 80% of our representatives of the state of California are Democrats,
Right.
and they have a super majority, and they've done that on purpose. They've set things up to where there's a governor's race coming up next year. What kind of chance does a Republican, or at least somebody who's right thinking, have a chance? Do they have any chance of ever actually being governor of this state again?
Not with the current election system, it's corrupt. I mean, unless they wanna select, unless the people behind the elections wanna select for a Republican and say, "Oh, this year we made it even, we have a Republican governor, and, we know he's really left-leaning, but, we got a Republican governor, a rhino," but, that sort of thing. So, whatever suits their needs, we don't have a free and fair election system. It's who is ever selected, not elected, is the mantra. And so there's a whole big as you know, there's a whole big system set up to make sure that the people they want selected get selected and then are then beholding to the masters, so to speak. So it's been that way in California for a long time. Really started to see it around after 2000, and then we got into the numbers game and we got into electronics, and pretty soon we're doing algorithms, and people are winning races by millions of votes, but then all of a sudden they're losing at the very end. I mean, it's about as much corrupt as you can get in California as at any other place in the nation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you used to expect these kind of things in Illinois and other places like that. But no, California, as far as I know and am concerned, is the worst now at this
Right.
point when it comes to election fraud, especially and tampering with the elections and voter fraud. Voter fraud when you have millions of illegals who are voting now because of the
Right.
voter law that Gary Brown put in place.
That is the other real bad thing, is that the voter fraud from illegal foreign nationals that have come in, and of course it was, I think it was not Gavin, Bill Clinton, the other Gavin Newsom, but Bill Clinton, who brought in motor voter nationally, and then
Mhm.
of course it was instituted in California, and now every time a illegal alien comes to the DMV, he automatically gets to sign up and register to vote, and of
Yes.
course that generates more of these mail-in ballots, and the corruption just keeps on rolling along.
My frustration, Paul, is my own Republican elected representatives don't even talk about it. None
Mhm.
of them bring it up. Even when they're campaigning, no one talks about it. I'm a delegate with the California Republican Party, and at the conventions, nobody's talking about it.
Right.
It's crazy. We're never going to win another election. How come nobody's screaming?
Well, and again, that because they're benefiting by it. We have token Republicans you were talking earlier about we have 120 legislators in California, 52 members of the House of Representatives. Let's break it down. You have 80 assembly members and 17 are Republican. You have 40 senators and 7 are Republican. You have 52 members of the House of Representatives and 7 are Republican. It's a one-party system, just exactly like you'd find in North Korea or China or Cuba or Venezuela, where there's California now in the one-party systems of the world, and you can't get out of it unless you make a real serious change and get rid of the election system, and all the ailments that bother us today come down to a corrupt constitution that was an adopted constitution, not the original constitution, but an adopted constitution in 1879 that's a corporation. So this corporation that we've been living with, which is they're doing business as, not necessarily governance as, but business as, has been leading to higher taxes every single year, more bureaucracies every single year, to the point where we're just now strangled off. And very easy to change the Constitution, which is another sign of corruption leading to a democracy. There's been over 955 alterations of the Constitution since 1879. That 955, I mean, that's just outrageous. There was the US Constitution came with 10 amendments in 1791. And then it's been what, 2017 after that, and 2 of those have been repealed. We haven't changed our Constitution for the United States very much, and we shouldn't. But with that one, you can change it anytime you want to. And of course, it's led to all these massive laws and bureaucracies that we have until now. We've run out of other people's money. The state of California is really, really broke, as you know, and you've been hearing about. But and it's collapsing. It absolutely is collapsing. So the only way to change all this is to create a new state. And when you create the new state, you can work on making the old state better again. That's another thing a lot of people haven't really figured out, is that they did this very same thing in West Virginia. They split apart from Virginia because Virginia was wanting to be a slave state in the Union at the time of the Confederacy, but West Virginia formed a new state, and it ultimately in fact, saved the Union as the Civil War went through. But it served also, this reorganized government of Virginia, as a basis of a new state after the war. And that's what's going to happen here, is that the reorganized California, which we formed 2 years ago, is going to be the state that's going to be actually rebuilding California back into a great state again. That's part of the plan. And it's going to work very well. It's going to work. It's going to have to work, because we're at that point in time financially in California. We don't have the money to sustain ourselves, and we don't have the income, but we sure have the expenses going out. That means we have to change the legislature. We have to make some major changes, so that we have a Republican form of government. Right now, we have mob rule. We truly, and they brag about it all the time, we have a democracy that we live in. And I always ask the question, how do you like this democracy? How's it working out for you? Democracy was never envisioned by the founding fathers.
No, as a matter of fact, they were dead set against it.
Boy, they came out very harshly against democracy. And that's why we've changed our motto around a little bit. We're saying no to democracy and restore the republic, which is what you do, is you look to restore the republic and get a Republican form of government, which is part of the guarantee clause that the U.S. government says we're supposed to have. So in that, there's 3 things that are really important. A Republican form of government, that's the government should provide that. They should provide freedom from invasion and provide freedom from domestic violence. That's really 3 fundamentals the government's supposed to do. California fails on all 3 of those miserably.
As we just saw in Los Angeles.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, now what's happened is the California government has turned to a group of insurrectionists, which is just exactly what's happened in the Confederacy during the Civil War. So we're getting the same kind of phenomena right now as we saw at the beginning of the Civil War, where people are talking about insurrection. It's kind of interesting. The word insurrectionist started because of California in 1850. And in fact, if you're labeled an insurrectionist today, you're put on the terror watch list. Isn't that interesting? So, but what California has done is they've started to push back against against the federal government, and they're starting to go against any laws, all the laws of the federal government. And as a result, the insurrectionists, the people who are committing these crimes, are stating that they are in a state of insurrection against the Constitution. Gavin Newsom has stated he's not going to pay federal taxes anymore. So is the Speaker of the House. Those are 2 things right there that are no. You can't do that. So they are labeled now in the eyes of Kristi Noem and others as insurrectionists. So when you get 2 or more insurrectionists together, you have an insurrection. Now, I bring it up because California in the 1850s, they wanted California to be a slave state coming into into the Union in 1850. The South wanted them to become a slave state, and the people in California said, "No, we're not going to do that." Well, the people were so upset in the South, they started, demanding and that they're going to leave the Union if in fact California was going to be a slave state, and they settled it with a great compromise, but it still left that term out there, as the press was calling it, an insurrectionist. That's where the word was invented, was the South complaining about the fact that California should be a slave state. So now here we have it. Gavin Newsom's complaining about the federal government. He's turned to insurrection, and so has Alex Padilla. So has all these other so-called leaders. They're now putting complaints against the government, the U.S. government, and their aim is really to secede from the Union. That's their aim. They want to secede from the Union. And you've heard of the Cal Exit program. That's an example. That was a precursor. They floated that for a long time. That we came along around the same time, and we were being videotaped not with them, but side to side. Like, is it going to be Cal X, or is it going to be a new California, a new state? That was 9 years ago, but now here it is. And it doesn't surprise me. It shouldn't surprise most people that you're hearing a lot of insurrection talk coming from Gavin Newsom and others, because their goal is to become their own nation. Yeah. And that nation will be beholding to the likes of China, Great Britain, and the cartels. That's really what it's going to come down to.
They get away with so much because of the wealth of resources here.
Right.
And we're right, right there on the ocean. We have huge ports of entry in San Francisco and Los Angeles, of course, and San Diego. So that adds to our stature on a worldwide basis of being, as they keep saying, well, we used to be the 4th largest economy in the world, and then it got knocked down to the 5th. And now, last time I heard, we're like 7th, because we're in trouble. We're in serious trouble.
I've been getting reports all the time, but today I got some very grim financial information, and I haven't sussed through it yet. I'm not going to report on it until I do. But if it's true, it's like even worse than I thought, or probably you thought. Going down that road, it's rather than 7th, we might be 10th or 11th. It's all happened so quickly, because of the policies of the Gavin Newsom and the state of California chasing businesses out, California Air Resources Board chasing major industry out, that sort of thing. So the tax base, the taxes coming into California by the population, the citizens, is woefully low. Their corporation taxes are woefully low. So it's nothing but down from here until New California can be established. We will bring about a new financial revolution, economic revolution in California, because we're going to slash taxes and do all the right things that really a state should do, which should be a state that sets up laws that's conducive to exploding businesses, to having new businesses come in and be receptive to that. But right now, California is just an ugly place to do business. Over regulation, over taxation, those are the two killers.
Which is why Chevron has left. Valero is in the process of leaving, and that's just Tesla leaving California. This is unsustainable. It's crazy, and yet we have. I keep being told, people in my party, that California is really a red state. Really?
Mm-hmm.
Are they even showing up to vote? No, only about a third of those who claim to be Christian. A third of the population in California claim to be Christian. Only about 40% of them are even registered to vote. And when it comes to midterms and primary elections, it's in the teens. It's dismal. It's pathetic. We've handed over control because we've bought into the narrative through the media and through the left that your vote doesn't count. Why don't you just sit back and let us do what we want to do to you, because we're going to do it anyway, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. That's been the attitude for I don't know how long now, but it is. I'm glad you brought up the whole example of West Virginia, because people say, well, states that have split is because half the population at least had enough of the representation, and they blazed their own trail successfully. The West Virginia example is a good one. Do you believe that the state of California is actually red, or is that just a bunch of
No,
Republicans wishing it were so?
I've spoken in every county and been back to almost all of them again 3 or 4 or 5 times. No, California is a deep red state, but the election system keeps us down. We're being suppressed, we're being disenfranchised, especially this last election was a big time disenfranchisement. But if you have a fair vote, and if we go back to paper ballots and we go back to 1-day voting and we do all the right things, you'll see that California will be a strong red state. We anticipate in our state split, which could happen as early as next month, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, I might break a little news for you,
This is
but
huge.
it could happen as early as July. And the system, if there's a scenario, you can read this on our website. It's called Splitsville. Is New California unconstitutional? Is the name of this article. It was written about 2 weeks after we declared independence in January of 2018, and the author of the article was a professor, or is a professor at the University of Tennessee, and he theorized that New California could in fact become a state when there's a financial crisis at hand for California. Well, there's one right now, and this was in 2018. He's writing this, and his projection was it was all going to happen in 2021, which is what we thought was going to happen. And in fact, California's first financial crisis happened right at the end of 2020. But Biden came in and quickly gave him $97 billion as a bailout. So that kind of put it on hold. We
Yes.
knew that California would still go tanking. And so we just sort of planned a little bit differently. We planned that when Donald Trump became president in 2024, that he would be able to come in March of 2025 and install us as a state. But this guy theorizes that, and it's all been done before, that New California would be established during a financial crisis, and that he would invoke emergency clauses, and he would actually install us as a state, because California's financial situation and leadership situation would deem the state to be ungovernable. And so that scenario is out there, and you can actually read it on a website. If you go to the website and go to the news story on New California State on Splitsville, you can read it. We anticipate that could possibly happen as early as July, and it's constitutional. The president doesn't need necessarily to have the approval in a traditional fashion for the Congress, but it will demand that happen. But he can invoke us into a state. And we anticipate that actually might happen.
This is the time to move, because how involved would the federal government be in establishing a new California state?
They would be heavily involved initially because of the installation process and stabilization of government. They would have great oversight over that. And in fact, we would anticipate that whoever's there be appointments. We already have a government set up. As you know, we've been conducting governmental businesses, and we have an active legislation. We're just now finalizing the Constitution.
I love it. It's like, if you build it, they will come.
Right.
And you did. You
is.
actually have established a form of government they're ready to go and ready to walk right into it, as people will find out this coming Tuesday, June 17th, right there on the steps of the California State Capitol building. This is
That's
huge.
right.
What time does that start?
That's gonna start at 1:30 on the west side, and, as you know, you've seen some of them, you've been to a couple. We're gonna be making another proclamation about what's going on with the state of California, and, we get right down to the real brass tacks. We talk about some things that people don't wanna hear about, but we talk about child sex trafficking, because California is the #1 child sex trafficking state in the union, and it's the second largest country, if you will, in the nation, behind China, for child sex trafficking. It's horrible what's happening, and nobody in the legislature except recently, you may have noticed that they did pass that one bill that said that they weren't going to, that it was going to be illegal to traffic 16 and 17-year-old girls.
And
Well,
then
that
they had to take that part out. That's a Shannon Grove thing. She's the only one that I've heard actually really championing that
well,
cause.
we after we went down there and started shaming them about 6 times, and you stand there and you see it. We just talk right there into the building almost. And after going down there about 6 times and championing that whole thing about child sex trafficking, they actually passed one of those bills, and it was unanimous in the assembly, but it was all begrudging. They didn't want to do it, and they were shaming themselves into some people doing it. But I believe that that's because we've been raising such a ruckus down there and embarrassing them. They don't like it. We get people call us all the time, and they don't. The staffers, they say, my assembly person doesn't like what you're saying about him. I said, well, is it true? Yes, but so what? That's the way it works. But we know we've been having an effect. But where's Gavin Newsom on all this stuff? Here's Gavin Newsom worried about not even worried about Los Angeles, and he's certainly not worried about child sex trafficking in his own state. It's just amazing, absolutely amazing.
You're right. I don't hear him talking about it at all.
No, and
instead, this idiot and his collective group of idiots all passed, what was it, a $50 million budget to fight against anything that President Trump tries to establish to make things better for all of us.
Right.
They're right. Trump-proof California. We're broke. Where'd that money come from?
Well, here's the problem for them. And Trump did exactly what he needed to do as president. He saw that they were dragging their feet to suppress these riots. One of the first things I did all the riot training and stuff like that as a school administrator, and I've been in riots. I was down there in Los Angeles in '92 when all that stuff broke out, and had to do certain school things and administrative things I didn't want to do. It was nasty. It was scary. But we had training. We did the things we needed to do to be safe and everything. And it was dangerous, really dangerous at many times. But this is just a repeat of that. And but the very first thing that they did, and I'll remember this forever because we were doing the same thing about. We cut out in our schools. We said no more nighttime activities. Everybody go home. We're just not going to do nighttime activity. So we put a curfew on the things we did. Well, they didn't put one curfew. It took them 5 days, CharLee, 5 days to come up with a curfew. Now, wait a minute. Donald Trump, what did he do? It took him 2 or 3 hours to realize they weren't going to do anything because they didn't do anything in the fires.
No, it started on a Friday. It got far worse on Saturday. Still Governor hairdo saying and doing nothing. Karen Bass saying and doing nothing. As a matter of fact, saying, oh, that's just a small little area. Well, that small little area is how Seattle started during the whole COVID shutdown when they took over downtown, basically, or a huge portion of it. And
these things happen.
Yeah, we're running this now, and nobody stepped in except the governor and the mayor of Portland, the mayor of Seattle. Oh, it's like the summer of love. It's
right
again.
Well, you remember during the Floyd riots that they let these things simmer for 2 or 3 days before they tried to do anything about it. Well, that isn't Trump's style. When they trapped those ICE agents in that business, and they didn't the police didn't respond. Oh, I don't think we can go help them. They're the Fed. We don't get involved. They kept on saying BS. Trump said, no, we're bringing people in. He activated the California National Guard because Newsom was sitting on his butt, putting hair gel on. He was not paying attention. Karen Bass wasn't looking for help. He's got people on the ground being trapped, literally trapped. And so he then activates the Marines as a double clutch on that, just to say, we'll bring in those Marines too. And there you have it. So what happened? They got everybody free. All of a sudden, things started to change, but they still did not have a curfew. And it wasn't until the night before last they put a curfew down. Right. And what was happening? You had all-night riots. You had all-night disturbances. This is the kind of neglect. And then you had this silly stunt that went on yesterday with Alex Padilla, with Kristi Noem.
Kristi Noem, yeah.
And you break that whole thing down. Of course, the left, the narrative is that he was being punished and he should listen. He walked into a room without an ID on. He came alongside of where the people were so he could make himself visible, and then all of a sudden he starts interrupting her in a loud, aggressive voice, and he starts to walk over to her, gesturing with his hands. That was a clear threat, and these guys didn't know who he was. They checked him out and locked him up. They should have kept him locked up, my opinion. But that was a stunt, and you can see these are the insurrectionists I'm talking about, and they're going to come out and come out and come out because all they have left to do is to create this type of a revolution and say they're going to split from California. And then they're going to go on their merry little ways, and that's not going to be the way it is. No, we're not going to allow that to happen in the new California state.
Split from the United States, you mean? Yeah, that it has another benefit too when these clowns do this kind of stuff. It's a fundraising effort.
Oh yeah, I know.
Their name is on the news, and dumbass people who agree with these dumbass politicians will start sending money to them. It's a huge fundraiser when they pull these stunts.
Yeah. Huge. I haven't quite figured out that kind of the angle on that. I mean, I can't bring myself to do that. People, we don't necessarily fundraise in the traditional manner, but we don't get big donors. We don't ask for big donors because we don't want big donors to tell us what to do. And that's really what it is. So we go through the pains of every month. Are you going to meet payroll? Well, you don't have payroll, but are you going to meet your bills? And, that sort of thing. But I look back on it now, 8 years of doing this, it's like a habit, and it's like a bad habit I don't want, but I understand it's a necessary one because I think we're showing people around the world that we can do this without the $80 to $90 billion or millions of dollars to create a new state. And we're doing it. It's working. That's a lot of hard work. People donate small amounts of money to us. And every month we come out, not fine, but we come out, we're okay, and we're ready to go for the next month. So
it is a true grassroots movement in the purest sense of the term. These are people who love our state and don't want to see the left continue dominating it. And like I said, there's many in the new California state who are volunteering, even who they might be no party preference. They might even be on the left. They realize that we're being run by horrible people, and there's a huge population of the way they've set up the voting laws and so on, that I don't see that changing. I don't see how that's ever going to change until those election laws are held and actually enforced, because we do have them. They're just not enforced, or they're completely ignored. We got to do something, and I'm ready. I'm one of those guys. I'm on board. I'll keep fighting to fix California, but in the meantime, if we can find a way to get away from them,
right,
and establish our own state, a new California state, count me in.
Well, let me let's put this out here for everybody, that when we become a state, we're going to have 20. Let's see, we're going to have 26 members of the House of Representatives. They'll all be Republican, and 2 senators. They'll all be Republican. And I will bet you that when we make the separation after the first election, California will be the same. They'll be all Republican, because the system will have changed. We'll have changed. We will not have machines to do the calculations with. There's going to be gone. It's going to be paper elections. And I will bet you that we will be a red state on both sides.
Because a rising tide lifts all boats, as the example you used of West Virginia, basically saving the state of Virginia, because they thrived when they said, you people have lost your minds. We're not going to associate with you anymore. We'll still be Virginia, obviously, but we're going to be over here. We're calling ourselves West Virginia. And that saved that state.
Right.
That's a great example.
Yeah. And we're going to save California in the same way. There'll be 20 million. We basically break the state out by population. Right now, there's fundamentally 40 million people. So California gets 40 or 20 million. We get 20 million. and it breaks out evenly that way. It's an odd state in the sense that you've got 3 areas of California, but that's the way the urbanization works. And the rest of the area, of course, is run by California, and it's very, very rural, urban, suburban, and rural.
How it works, you and I have talked about many times on my show and on the radio as well. We've talked about how it will work and how it will all break down. But the bottom line is legally, you're following all the rules of the
Right.
state of California Constitution and the federal Constitution. And legally, it can be set up in such a way that no matter how much they fight against it, they can't stop it.
They can't stop it. This is when you go through and set up a proper constitutional process, such as a state, forming a state, it really does have a beginning, middle, and an end. And it continues to perpetuate itself based upon the language, I think, and the spirit that you find within the Constitution itself as you're interpreting what is the next step you have to go through to get there. And it just perpetuates itself. And I liken it to impeachments, because impeachments, once you come out and do an investigation in the House, and then you vote to impeach someone, the process rolls itself out, and it really goes until it ends. I mean, it's going to end, but I mean, it's either going to be a yes or no on that end. And the Constitution works that way when it's worked right. And in our process, which we've done now for 8.5 years, has every step of it has been continuing on to the next step, to the next step, to the next. And we're just in a natural progression to do the 13th Constitutional Convention and sign off on this final Constitution. It's really a miracle that God has his hand on us. We know that, and we treasure that. And we all kind of had to figure out what's really driving all this. And well, we have God-given rights given to us by the founders, and it sets us apart. Because if you take a look at what's going on in Canada, they don't have a constitution and they don't have God-given rights. They don't have a Bill of Rights, and that's one of the reasons they're still part of the crown.
Yeah. And now that you told me exactly how involved the federal government would be in a state splitting like that, that makes it even more apparent that the timing, it's imperative that we move now. Because if Kamala Harris had stolen that election and actually won to become president, would you see any light at the end of the tunnel like you do now?
Very little.
Yeah.
Very little. I mean, the process, the political end of this is not there for them to push around. They really can't stop it. And I really believe they don't understand how it all works. They clearly don't. Most people don't understand how it all works. Even some of your top flight constitutional professors don't understand. It's an area of law they don't understand. So it's hard for them to see how it might turn out in the end. But it is turning out in the end like we thought. Kamala Harris, I think we'd have to wait another 4 more years before it would happen, or there would be an economic smack around. See, California is an economic driver for the rest of the nation, and we know that. And right now it can't drive anywhere because of the overregulation, taxation, and everything else that they're doing. But we will free all that up, and that's one of the great things is we have such massive potential here to bring back not just new California, but new California and the nation. So we see that, we understand that.
It's so much education has to take place that people need to be aware, and they're not. You've got a media that ignores you, that is definitely not going to promote or help in any way. Regardless of what happens to the state, they don't care because they're on board. They're on the side of the left looking at their little Star Trek utopia. What a wonderful world it would be. What a glorious time to be free. Yeah. It's like the adults. Why don't you sit down, media? Because the adults are talking now. You've lost your position of power in dramatic ways, but unfortunately, at least half the population, they're still getting all their information from the same tired, stupid, left-leaning sources. So it's all about getting the word out. And what I would like to encourage you to do is actually show up at the California State Capitol building Tuesday, June 17th. It's coming up. Make plans if you can be there, and bring people with you so they can get this education as well. And I'll tell you what, once you hear Paul speak and explain how it's all going to work, you're going to realize this is imperative. This has to happen. We have to be on board, because look what's going on. If we do nothing, what's going to happen? And you mentioned California being such an economic powerhouse. As California goes, so goes the rest of the nation. Whether you like it or not. You're watching in Texas? Nah, we're good over here. We got Abbott. Everything's taken care of. You're in Florida? Yeah, this will never happen here. Really? It did at one time. You weren't always a red state. This is an imperative thing, and we need you on board, and we need you getting involved. So give us the details again about what's going to happen Tuesday, June 17th.
Okay, it's known as a proclamation day. We come up and we'll be reading a whole bunch of statements about the state of California and why New California is doing what it's doing.
Basically, our own Declaration of Independence, isn't it?
Of sorts, which we did do that in 2018. But it's a progression of documentation that we have to perform constitutionally to tell California that we're now New California, essentially, and the reasons why. So that's where it kind of gets a little iffy for those. They don't like what we say, of course. But the imperative is that that people show up and be a part of this historical moment. It really truly is a historical moment, and to be a part of it, get engaged. We are doing this because it's our duty at this point in time to give everybody the opportunity to have liberty back where they don't have it now. Right now you have an oppressive government. It's a communist regime. And it's a one-party state. I mean, like I said, we've joined the ranks of Cuba and North Korea and China as one-party states. So we don't want that anymore. We want to have a Republican form of government. We don't want a democracy. We want to restore the republic, which is what we're doing. And we want to bring that back. Being in a Republican form of government has been sorely missed. I mean, you remember back in the days in the 70s and the 80s, what it was like in California. That was a real Republican form of government, even though it was structured funny, but we still were Republican. Now we don't have any. We're totalitarian. This is a totalitarian state, and we can straighten it out by joining up with the New California State movement and being a part of this great historic moment on the 17th.
What time and where?
It's going to be on the west steps of the Capitol.
That's facing the Tower Bridge.
The Tower Bridge, that's correct, and it starts at 1:30. We'll be going at 1:30. So we've been down there many times. We love the horses come out for us, and the highway patrol guys give us the thumbs up as we're reading it. Wow. That's not supposed to happen. I shouldn't say that, but when I'm talking up there and I'm watching them, they got their heads rocking as we're talking. I'm like, okay, I'm connecting. We had one point, one of the speeches, when I was making one of the speeches, people don't know, but as you're standing there looking at the Tower Bridge, on the left-hand side is the Supreme Court building. And so all the bailiffs, everybody came out at one point, came across the street and stood on the sidewalk and watched and listened to us for about 45 minutes. I was like shocked to see that.
Yeah,
that was a shocker.
That's awesome. Speaking of government employed people, how many of our Republican elected representatives are definitely on board with this, or are they fighting against you too? Because
zero. No. Exactly. And again, this is the tell. Zero are working with us, and the reason is that they all benefit by it. Mm-hmm. And that's the rhinoism. They all benefit by it, and they fight us tooth and nail. But listen, I got to tell you something. President Trump gained 10 counties out of California this year. Actually, it was more than that. I'm not going to argue about because the count was off, but they claimed 10. You talk about you being a delegate. in all the counties of California, we know these things because our people were delegates to themselves. But in all the counties of California, really, the California Republican Party is almost nil or void. There's nobody who participates in any of the activities because they realize it's all, rigged. And so we had 10 counties in Central California, and we've had some very, very aggressive, assertive county chairs who've gone to all those counties, and we blossomed and we grew, and they started coming down there and getting politically activated in the sense of talking to county supervisors and raising a ruckus. Well, all 10 of those counties had 0 representation by Republicans, but you know who they had who that was there in every one of those counties knocking it out? New Californians. And Trump won those counties. And I can tell you in a free fight or fair fight with the elections, he'll take all these counties. But it was interesting because the Trump people said thank you to us for that. And he didn't win California because of the scam that goes on with Kamala Harris, but the fact of the matter that he recognized that we were a representative body politically for him. And that was a big thing for everybody.
We need to Gavin-proof California, not
Oh
Trump.
yeah.
So this is a great way. When if you can't seem to win in the way the rules are set up right now, change the rules. New California State, newcaliforniastate.com, right? Is where we can
That's correct.
get up on all the information about what's going on. It's a great website, newcaliforniastate.com. And Paul Preston will be on the west steps of the California State Capitol building Tuesday, June 17th. Please plan on being there. I'm going to be there. Come on up and say hello, please. I'm going to be shooting some live footage there and doing everything I can to help get the word out. It's a blessing. This is a blessing. And the opportunity to strike is right now.
Right. Absolutely is.
We can't waste this moment. So please bring some people with you and let's show up in mass. Let's have a huge group there and get educated about what's happening, that there is a choice. And you don't have to keep just sitting back going, what do I do? What do I do? I get out. I got to leave. I got to leave my state. This is all I've ever known. All my family and friends are here. My whole life is here. My history is here. Well, don't leave. Here's an opportunity and here's an answer as far as I'm concerned. And Paul Preston, thank you so much for all that you do, my friend.
CharLee, thank you for all the things that you've done for everybody in the state of California and New California. You're a great patriot, and we love you.
I appreciate that very much. It's my honor and privilege. And I will see you Tuesday, June 17th, 1:30.
Awesome. See you then. Thank you.
And there you go. Get involved, newcaliforniastate.com. And get involved with this show. You want to contact me, you want to actually maybe even be on the show. There's a calendar on there for you to be able to schedule, and why not? Have you ever had anybody else offer this to you? Yeah, I'll put you on the show. Absolutely. I'd be glad to talk to you. I have a lot of people who want to stop everything that I do, but not just me. People like Paul and other podcasters that are conservative, but in the state of California, we are very rare. We're very rare. And I had all my Facebook pages deleted. That just happened this past weekend. Every one of them gone. So I don't even have a presence on Facebook anymore. But you can find me like right here on YouTube at CharLee Simons, and also on Rumble, rumble.com/DoNotTalk. Thank God for Rumble. Get involved with Rumble. Get an account there so you can participate and become part of that community, a free speech community. Rumble.com/DoNotTalk. And find me through my website, charleesimons.com, CharLeeSimons.com. You can even help financially, which would be a tremendous blessing because I really need a new computer. May God bless you and keep you. May God bless America, but most importantly, America bless God.